Right, so tonight's planting is going to be starting with something native. So this is Dracaena fragrans, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more in a bit. But we're going into an area where I'm really trying to close the western side of a planting area. So this is the area where there's some mature guava trees, some mature mango trees, and in amongst that I've been planting a lot of different native and non-native trees, both fruiting and non-fruiting, to try and create a really mixed species, really interesting food foresty area, which admittedly is more or less what I've been trying to do to all 10 acres, but this is an area where I've concentrated quite a lot of that. And the trouble is the afternoon sun comes right through here, and that's really played havoc with some of the plantings over the last year. So I'm trying to close that off. And I started doing that a while ago with a Madagascan umbrella tree, which is one of the terminalias, and I cannot remember which one off the top of my head. And then more recently I planted a sausage tree, which is Cagelia africana. And last night I planted the Diospirus spiliformis here. And those are all three quite big trees. Not in all situations, but they can all get quite large. And probably because we have a roof here, which creates a lot of runoff during the rainy season, the jackalberry, which is the one that is probably the most likely to not get huge of those, will grow very well once it establishes. So I actually want multiple layers of vegetation here. Now, obviously I do the companion planting, which does mean we do have a little bit more of that, but a lot of those will have to be removed or have to be allowed to spread further away from the original plant as they grow. And so I do want to have some smaller trees in here as well, just to make sure we have effectively a wall of vegetation from floor to ceiling once these trees all get big. So we're going to be doing a little bit of that tonight with tonight's planting, which is Oncoba spinosa. So this is the fried egg plant, which I did plant the other night elsewhere, along with the sausage tree to make the sort of sausage and egg pun, which is very popular with walking safari guides here. And that is going to be a rather prickly tree, but it's also quite a pretty tree. It has a wonderful flower, which is where it gets the fried egg name. It's also sometimes called the Snuffbox tree after its very hard-shelled fruits. It's not the only hard-shelled fruit we have in Zambia. It probably is the only one I'm going to be planting because I haven't germinated any of the other, which we do have around already this year. And the fruit actually doesn't taste great when it is fresh, but once it has dried a bit, it has this really fantastic, rich smell, which I think would work really well in preserves, and I would like to find that out in the future. But anyway, back to the Dracaena. Dracaena fragrans is native to Zambia, but these ones probably aren't, because as far as I can tell, most Dracaena fragrans stock in gardens and in nurseries around Zambia is not originally from Zambian stock, because although this became an incredibly popular houseplant, I think probably under the Victorians, I'm not entirely sure when it became a global sensation, it's quite widespread throughout the tropics of Africa itself, so it probably was collected from a much more accessible part of Africa, because its range does extend to a lot of places that had a lot of maritime trade for a very long time, and then it's probably spread around the globe and probably spread back to Zambian nurseries from international stock. So quite possibly, although this is a native plant, this isn't native genetics that I'm planting here. And there is a general issue with a lot of the plants that are planted in Zambian gardens, even though we have some fantastic ornamental natives, not being native. A friend of mine is actually trying to do a little bit about that, so I will try and link to his channel in the description. But he breeds a lot of native and non-native, to a certain extent, ornamental plants, and he gave me a few of some of the more interesting ones that I quite like. And I am very bad at remembering names, so I forgot what quite a few of those were, but the Siphonochilus you've seen lately and the Costus, I think Spectabilis, but we'll see when it flowers, that I planted recently all came from him originally, as did the Anchomanes. And tonight's first companion plant is also in that, so that is a Glossostelma, as far as I know. There are several different species of Glossostelma in Zambia, I think, so I'm not entirely sure which one this is. I will put a picture of the one I do know up on the screen, but this might be the other one. I have a feeling he told me it was the other one, which means I will just put the genus name for now. But that is a lovely, beautiful flower, and it's from a family that tends to have quite toxic contents, the Aiphanes, which does mean that it works quite well as a toxic barrier. However, we are going to continue our planting with a probably native genetics Aloidendron. This is from the eastern province and into Malawi. It's very popular traditionally as a little sort of livestock hedge. It's very easy to propagate aloe. It does enter the global market these days and probably had to come from either Zambia or Malawi because it doesn't naturally grow anywhere else. And then we're going to be rounding that off with something that I think might be native, but I've never seen confirmation of that, which is Cotlodon barbae, which is the bush-veld Pixia, which is a small succulent bush which should spread out and form a nice succulent bush and ground cover while everything else is settling in. Once everything else has settled a bit more, I will probably cut this back quite significantly or possibly even move it elsewhere. But for now, while everything needs that little bit of extra support around it, and the Glossostelma isn't really up to being the ground cover itself, the Cotlodon should be doing that job for it. Right, so that should be everything for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you haven't enjoyed it, thank you for watching anyway. Do tune in again tomorrow because I will be planting something different. I am not sure what yet. I have a few suspects lined up, but we'll see.